You'd think being a county zoning inspector would give me some kind of shield against idiocy. Turns out, it just paints a bigger target on your back, especially when your neighbor is a high-octane HOA Karen with a god complex and a taste for bulldozers. Let's set the scene. My name's Nate. I've owned this farm for 7 years, 19 acres of peace, chickens, and the occasional goat that thinks it's a gymnast. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. My grandfather left me this land, and before you get misty-eyed, no, he didn't die heroically on it. Unless you count choking on his chewing tobacco while yelling at the rooster again. The land's legally zoned as agricultural use, no fancy restrictions, and it's outside city limits. Important detail. Remember that. Now, my land was peaceful until Eagle Crest Heights HOA decided the view of my chicken coop was ruining their luxury subdivision aesthetic. I'm not kidding. That was on the actual complaint letter. You ever seen a luxury subdivision? Take a cul-de-sac, add beige houses with fake shutters and 9-foot privacy fences, and sprinkle in 10 Karens armed with clipboards and Botox. Voila. Enter Marcy. Marcy is the self-declared president for life of the HOA. Early 60s, pastel polo shirts, and an energy that screams, "I'd like to speak to your manager's manager." She moved in last year and immediately launched her campaign to revitalize the neighborhood. Apparently, that included me, or more specifically, erasing me. The first sign was a letter, a nice, passive-aggressive envelope taped to my mailbox, like some kind of territorial warning from a suburban velociraptor. It read, "To whom it may concern, your structure, barn, appears to be non-compliant with HOA visibility standards. Kindly remove or relocate the structure within 14 days to preserve the neighborhood's aesthetic integrity." Aesthetic. Integrity. For a barn. Painted red. With goats inside. I laughed. Thought maybe she'd confused my mailbox for one of her minions. But nope. 2 days later, another letter. Then a third. This time, citing unauthorized livestock and unregistered fencing materials. I almost choked on my coffee. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I ignored her. But Marcy? Marcy doesn't handle being ignored well. Her entire personality runs on control and confrontation. And when her warning letters didn't make me roll over and raise my barn, she decided to escalate. First it was code enforcement, local city guys. Joke was on her. I am code enforcement. She called in a noise complaint. I reviewed the file and filed it under N for nice try. She didn't like that. That's when she started trespassing. I caught her on my land one morning, crouching behind a hay bale like she was in some sort of stealth mission. I walked up, holding a thermos of coffee and my phone recording. She shrieked like I'd just caught her siphoning gas, then immediately started lecturing me about how your fence line is violating property boundaries. Lady, the fence was installed with county surveyors 20 years ago, but she wasn't done. Next came the flyers. Marcy printed out glossy HOA newsletters that included a full-page spread titled, "The Eyesore on Eagle Ridge, When One Man Refuses Progress." It had a blurry zoomed-in photo of my compost pile. I framed it, hung it over my fireplace. Honestly, it added a certain rustic charm. You'd think that was the peak, right? Wrong. Because 3 weeks later, I woke up to the unmistakable rumble of heavy machinery. And let me tell you, there are few things more jarring than walking onto your front porch at 6:15 a.m. in your flannel pajama pants, coffee in hand, and seeing 5 bulldozers idling just beyond your fence line. Not one. 5. Each one painted bright yellow, lined up like some kind of demolition boy band, engines humming like they were warming up for a concert. And there she was, Marcy, standing next to them in a pastel pink windbreaker, arms crossed, clipboard in hand, like the director of a very aggressive suburban ballet. She looked up at me, smug as a cat in a birdhouse. "You've been served," she shouted over the engine noise, waving a folder. "You've got 30 minutes to clear the area. This structure is coming down." I blinked. "You're trespassing," I said. "No, you're trespassing," she snapped. "This is HOA land." I looked around. Same oak trees. Same gravel driveway. Same broken-down truck that hadn't moved since last winter. Yeah, pretty sure it was still my land. Now, any normal person might have panicked. Called the sheriff. Thrown things. But I smiled. Because there was one delicious little fact Marcy had failed to check. I wasn't just some stubborn farmer. I was the county zoning inspector. And she'd just brought an industrial wrecking crew onto protected agricultural land without permits, without clearance, and without the faintest understanding of how badly she was about to screw herself. But I didn't say that. Not yet. I just sipped my coffee and asked, "So, these boys got lunch packed, or are they planning to bulldoze through that too?" She narrowed her eyes. "Don't test me, Nathan. You've had more than enough time to comply." Comply? God, the way she said that word, like she was a Bond villain in a Banana Republic scarf. Behind her, one of the dozer drivers looked hesitant. He leaned over and whispered something, probably along the lines of, this doesn't look like a subdivision. But Marcy jabbed her clipboard at him like it was a sword, and the man flinched. I walked off my porch and down toward the fence, slow and easy, like I had all the time in the world. Because I did. She didn't know it yet, but she'd just made a federal mess on the wrong parcel of land. I just needed to let her dig the hole a little deeper. Literally. There's a specific kind of silence that falls when someone realizes they may have just committed a felony, but hasn't quite figured it out yet. That was the soundtrack of the morning as I leaned on the fence, watching Marcy puff up like a blowfish in a Ralph Lauren catalog. "You've got 28 minutes left," she barked, tapping at her watch like I was on her HOA payroll. After that, we begin removal. Of what? I asked, genuinely curious. The barn? The goats? My sense of personal liberty. I'm not joking, Nathan. She brandished the folder in her hand like it was the Magna Carta. This property has been reassigned as communal development space. Your agricultural variance has been revoked. Oh no, not my variance. Except, see, here's the thing. The only agency with the authority to revoke a land use variance in this county is the county zoning department. You know, me. So I took the folder from her hand, flipped it open, and tried my best to keep a straight face. It was a mess, like a second grader tried to forge legal documents using Canva and whatever word art font screamed official. There was even a fake seal at the bottom that said verified by the HOA Council of Property Integrity. What is that? A church cult? The documents listed the Eagle Crest HOA as the primary managing entity and declared my land voluntarily annexed into the HOA domain. According to her, the HOA had held a majority vote to absorb the neighboring plots to maintain neighborhood quality standards. You can't just vote someone's land into your gated fantasy world. That's not democracy. That's monopoly with a head injury. I looked up at her. So, just to clarify, you've got 5 bulldozers on my land with no legal authority, ready to demolish a barn you do not own, based on documents you forged using a font called Jazzlet. She snatched the folder back. It's not forged. It's pre-approved through the board. Marcy, your board is just you, Linda from House 4, and a Cocker Spaniel with cataracts. The bulldozer engines sputtered to life. One of the drivers, clearly a guy who hadn't been warned he'd be doing federal crimes today, started easing his machine toward the fence. I could feel the rumble through my boots. Marcy watched him like a proud general inspecting her troops. And that's when I pulled out my badge. Now, to be clear, county zoning badges aren't flashy. Mine basically looks like a library card had a baby with a DMV name tag. But it's official. And more importantly, it means I have full authority to inspect, report, cite, and shut down any unauthorized land development inside the county line. So I held it up. I'm going to say this very slowly, I said, projecting my voice over the machine noise. You are attempting to alter protected agricultural land. Without permits. Without environmental review. Without notice. You've submitted fraudulent documents and hired heavy machinery to begin demolition. Which means, deep breath, you are committing multiple zoning and environmental violations, along with criminal trespassing, unlawful seizure, and probable conspiracy to commit fraud. There was a pause, and then I heard the sweetest sound, the beep 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 of a bulldozer going into reverse. 2 of the drivers backed up immediately. One even waved at me, mouthing the words, "Sorry, man," before turning off his engine and hopping out. Smart guy. But Marcy? Oh no. She doubled down. You're bluffing. You're just a farmer with a badge sticker. The HOA has rights. I stared at her. Did you just say the HOA has rights over county zoning law? Exactly, she snapped. That's when I took out my phone and dialed the sheriff's department. Direct line. They know me. I don't use it often, but when I do, it's because some clipboard-wielding overlord thinks she's playing SimCity, Dictatorship Edition. Hey, Craig, I said, once he picked up. Got a situation. Multiple trespassers with industrial equipment on protected AG land. Forged zoning paperwork. Attempted demolition. 5 dozers, 1 very loud Karen. You want to send a couple cruisers? Craig groaned. Please tell me it's not Eagle Crest again. Bingo. On our way. Marcy's eyes narrowed. You're calling in reinforcements? That's pathetic. I grinned. No. What's pathetic is weaponizing 5 bulldozers against goats and calling it urban revitalization. Now, you'd think that would have slowed her down. You'd be wrong. Instead of backing off, Marcy turned her attention to the drivers, still waiting on her next command, and started barking about rightful reclamation and eminent domain procedures. She even whipped out a laminated page that looked suspiciously like a Wikipedia printout on eminent domain, except half of it was highlighted in neon pink. Eminent domain, by the way, doesn't work that way. Especially not when the county owns the land rights and the person in charge of zoning enforcement is literally standing 10 feet from you. Still, she tried. She shouted legal terms like a toddler with a thesaurus: unauthorized habitat, visual blight, failure to integrate with neighborhood standards. At one point, she accused my goats of being aggressively styled. I swear, it's like she'd made up an entire legal system based on Pinterest boards and mid-tier real estate podcasts. The cruisers showed up about 10 minutes later. 2 sheriff's deputies got out, wearing that look you only get after too many HOA calls and not enough coffee. Craig stepped out last, hands on his hips. Oh great, he muttered. It's bulldozer day. I waved. Morning, Craig. Marcy stormed up to them before I could speak. Officers, I'm glad you're here. This man is illegally occupying HOA-administered development land. We voted to clear the property for a botanical retreat center. Craig blinked. You what? It's a community wellness project. Meditation yurts. Eco pathways. Koi ponds. He's standing in the way of progress. Craig looked at the bulldozers. Then the barn. Then at me. Is she serious? Deadly. Marcy tried to shove the fake documents into his hands. Here are the permits. Craig skimmed them, then looked up. Marcy, this is a Chili's menu with annexed, written in Sharpie on the back. I was in a hurry. If you've ever witnessed someone try to defend fake legal documents while standing in front of a barn, 5 bulldozers, 3 sheriff's deputies, and a goat named Pancake, you know it's an experience that changes you. Craig, the sheriff, was now holding Marcy's HOA annexation file like it was radioactive, which, given how many legal boundaries it violated, wasn't far off. Marcy, he said carefully, like she was a wild animal who might bolt. This isn't a legal document. This is literally a takeout menu with some buzzwords and a sketch of what I think is supposed to be a koi pond. It's a draft, she snapped. This is a vision plan. I didn't have time to print the final version. And yet, I said, smiling, you had time to hire 5 bulldozers. She ignored me and turned to the dozer drivers. Keep moving. You're still on the clock. This man is trying to delay demolition by pretending to be an official. Pretending, I said, holding up my zoning badge again. Didn't we cover this already? Craig stepped between us. Okay, that's enough. Marcy, you're going to need to stand down. You're trespassing on private land. Land that's registered under Nathan's name and zoned for agriculture. He's also our official zoning inspector. You've got no permits, no authority, and now you're staring down a whole list of criminal charges. Marcy looked at me, eyes narrowing like I'd personally offended her ancestors. You did this, she hissed. You brought bulldozers, I replied. I brought coffee. Then she did something truly bold. She tried to arrest me. I swear to you. She pulled a pair of pink fuzzy handcuffs, probably from some unfortunate bachelorette party, and marched toward me with the confidence of someone who had never once been told no in her life. You are under citizen's arrest for obstruction of community development and impersonating a public official. Craig stepped in again, holding up both hands. Nope, that's not how citizen's arrest works. Also, he's not impersonating. He's literally on payroll. Marcy turned to the deputies. Why aren't you doing anything? He's actively resisting neighborhood beautification. Because beautification doesn't involve bulldozing a legal farm. But this place is an eyesore. There's rusted tools. And livestock. And wind chimes made out of forks. Artisanal, I said helpfully. They're artisanal fork chimes. Obnoxious, she muttered. And your HOA bylaws don't apply outside your subdivision, Craig added. You can't just claim land that isn't under your jurisdiction. Marcy looked around like reality had just slapped her with a wet sponge. Her army of bulldozers had slowly dwindled. 3 of the drivers had already left, and the remaining 2 were sitting on their machines, clearly wondering if they still got paid for this fever dream. Fine, she snapped, marching toward her SUV. You're all going to regret this. This is harassment. This is anti-progress. I'll have the county commissioner on the phone before sundown. Tell her I said hi. I called after her. We went to high school together. She still owes me $20. Marcy paused, then made a noise that sounded like a blender full of rage and decaf. She drove off in a flurry of gravel and entitlement. And just like that, the circus packed up. Craig stayed behind while the last 2 drivers called their supervisor to explain why their morning demolition gig turned into a failed HOA coup. You sure you're okay? Craig asked. Peachy, I said, although I might need you to notarize something later. Thinking of turning Marcy's flyer into a historic document. Craig laughed. I'll pretend I didn't hear that. I poured him a cup of coffee from my thermos. Pancake the goat tried to steal it. Typical. So what now, he asked. Oh, I'm filing charges, I said. Trespassing. Attempted demolition. Fraud. Illegal land seizure. Maybe even impersonation of a government official. Depends how much of that HOA council paperwork was made up. He sipped his coffee. You sure you want to poke the bear? She didn't bring a bear, I said. She brought bulldozers. Craig just shook his head. Honestly, I wish we had more like you dealing with these people. I'm thinking of printing business cards, I said. Nate, farmer, inspector, goat whisperer, HOA slayer. Think it'll fit. Maybe use the backside for your fork chimes. Artisanal, I corrected him. That should have been the end of it. But if you've ever dealt with an HOA Karen on a mission, you know, there's always a sequel. See, while most people would take the hint, lick their wounds, and return to passive-aggressively measuring grass height, Marcy, she decided to level up. Because apparently, when bulldozers don't work, the next logical step is legal warfare. And not just any legal warfare. She tried to sue me for emotional damage, neighborhood destabilization, and, my personal favorite, intentional resistance to aesthetic reform. She even tried to argue that my zoning position created a conflict of interest and demanded that I be suspended pending moral review. Her lawyer, clearly just as exhausted by her as the rest of us, sent me a notice that sounded more like a Yelp complaint than a legal brief. Our client alleges the presence of unapproved structures, improper fencing coloration, and morally aggressive poultry behavior. Morally aggressive poultry. My rooster, Chad, would be thrilled. Now, I've read a lot of nonsense in my time as a zoning inspector. People trying to claim their koi ponds are residential water features, or that shipping containers are modernist guest homes. But being sued over morally aggressive poultry was a first, even for me. To be clear, the rooster in question, Chad, is a menace. He struts like he's got a personal gym subscription, screams at the sunrise like it owes him money, and once chased a UPS guy into a bush. But morally aggressive? That implies intent. And I'm not convinced Chad has the brain capacity to plan past his next angry squawk. Still, Marcy's complaint was filed. And that meant I got to do one of my favorite things in the world, go to court. But not just any courtroom. No, this was small-town municipal court. The kind where the bailiff also works at the local feed store. The judge is 3 months from retirement, and the water cooler is out of order because nobody wants warm justice. I showed up in a clean shirt, boots polished, folder full of receipts, zoning maps, aerial photography, and a full report documenting every fake violation Marcy had sent me. And yes, I included a photo of Chad mid-scream, just for flavor. Marcy came in like she was being wheeled into Versailles. Pantsuit, scarf, 2 HOA members flanking her like bodyguards. Clipboard in hand, of course. She dropped it dramatically on the table like she was presenting evidence at Nuremberg. Her opening statement accused me of creating an environmental wasteland, of fostering a cult of livestock worship, and, somehow, of causing her to develop acute architectural anxiety. Architectural anxiety. What does that even mean? Is she afraid of barns now? Does she scream at pergolas? My turn came. I stood, handed the judge a copy of my zoning badge, my inspection credentials, and documentation of all official boundaries, permits, and land use variances for the property. Everything was legal, current, and signed off by the county. Then I submitted her annexation documents. The judge squinted at the pages. Is this the HOA seal made with gold glitter? Yes, Your Honor, I said. And I believe that's a hot glue stain. He blinked. Was this printed on scrapbook paper? Yes, Your Honor. Marcy leapt up. It's a limited edition heritage parchment. The judge stared at her like she'd just declared war on geometry. I went in for the finishing move. As the zoning inspector assigned to this region, I also have recordings of Mrs. Blanchard trespassing, attempting to initiate illegal demolition, and providing fraudulent zoning documents to a construction crew. I've compiled timestamps and have statements from 2 of the bulldozer operators. One of them left me a voicemail apologizing and said, quote, I thought she was with the county. She had a folder. I clicked play on the voicemail. It echoed through the courtroom like a siren song of stupidity. Marcy went pale. She tried to interrupt, something about community sovereignty and self-governing landscaping rights, but the judge raised a hand. Mrs. Blanchard, sit down. She did, reluctantly, like a toddler who just realized snack time was over. The judge looked over the files, flipped through her complaint again, and sighed so deeply I thought he might exhale his soul. Well, he said, this is certainly a case. He leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Blanchard, you have no legal authority to annex land, direct construction on property not owned by the HOA, or issue citations outside your jurisdiction. Your actions have not only wasted this court's time, but they violated multiple zoning and trespassing statutes. This lawsuit is dismissed. She gasped. Furthermore, he added, you are hereby issued a court order to cease any further action against Mr. Hale's property. Failure to comply will result in criminal charges. Cue dramatic courtroom silence. Then he looked at me. Mr. Hale, you're free to go. And give my regards to Chad. I smiled. He's morally neutral today. Now, you'd think that was finally the end. But no, because Marcy, bless her tenacious little HOA soul, decided she wasn't done. No, she decided to take it public. I started getting emails, then calls, then a change.org petition titled, Remove the Rogue Inspector Destroying Our Community. It had 7 signatures. 3 of them were from the same IP address. She started handing out flyers again, this time featuring a photoshopped image of my barn on fire, with the caption, This is what happens when zoning goes unchecked. My favorite part? She added red demon eyes to Chad. Then came the town hall meeting. She called it herself. The entire community was invited. She even rented a projector and brought cupcakes. Someone said there'd be lemonade. I figured why not. So I went. Front row. Arms crossed. Chad was at home, but spiritually, he was there too. She stood in front of the room, launched into a 30-minute slideshow titled, The Truth Behind the Farm, a Threat to Eagle Crest Values. Each slide was worse than the last. Slide 4. A photo of my compost pile labeled Toxic Waste Zone. Slide 7. A picture of a goat with sunglasses. Okay, that one was real. Labeled Paramilitary Livestock. Slide 12. A zoom in of my mailbox captioned Gateway to Decay. She was halfway through a graph called Decline in Property Value Due to Proximity to Livestock Sounds, when a neighbor, Linda, bless her, raised her hand. Marcy, she said slowly, You do know you moved in next to the farm, right? Like on purpose. That was before I knew it was this kind of farm. What kind of farm has goats and chickens? Someone else asked, deadpan. Marcy's eyes darted. A corrupt one. There was a beat of silence. Then someone coughed. Then someone laughed. Then the laughter spread. People started walking out. Someone took 2 cupcakes on the way. One guy shouted, "Long live Chad." I could have said something. Stood up. Rubbed it in. But I didn't. I just smiled. Nodded to her on the way out. Because at that point, I didn't need to say anything. She was doing my job for me. By the time Marcy's HOA slideshow flopped harder than a goat on tranquilizers, the tide had fully turned. The HOA newsletter stopped arriving at my mailbox. The Bulldozer company sent me a formal apology and a free landscaping voucher, which I used to buy a picnic table and bolt it to the top of a hay bale. I called it agri-chic. Marcy called it visual terrorism. Tomato, tomato. I thought we were done. But no, because Marcy, grasping for her last strand of control, filed one more motion. An appeal. Specifically, she challenged the entire zoning designation of my land. Claimed there was a procedural error in my grandfather's original land variance from 1984 and that, as such, my property should be reclassified under suburban HOA authority. Her evidence? A photocopied map from what looked like a Denny's placemat and a letter she had written to herself on HOA letterhead, claiming the county had abandoned proper oversight of my unmonitored facility. Unmonitored facility. It's a farm, with a barn, and a goat named after a breakfast food. Still, it meant I had to appear at a county-level hearing. Now, county hearings aren't like small-town court. They're public. They're formal. There's an actual record. You wear real shoes. Marcy arrived with binders. Color-coded tabs. A key witness, in the form of a local real estate agent who had once walked past my fence and felt unsettled. She opened with a 10-minute speech on the sanctity of Eagle Crest values, dropped a few Latin legal terms she definitely Googled the night before, and concluded with a dramatic statement. If we allow one rogue farm to exist outside aesthetic control, what's next? Gnomes. Tire swings? Windmills? This is anarchy, gentlemen. One of the board members quietly asked, "Is she okay?" Then it was my turn. I stood, cleared my throat, and passed out 3 packets to the board: zoning history, topographical maps, and certified aerial photographs showing the exact property lines. Each packet ended with a notarized copy of the original agricultural variance, signed and sealed by the county. Then I added my twist. Just to be thorough, I said, I also submitted Marcy's annexation paperwork to the state zoning board last week for review. A pause. Why? The chairman asked. Because I suspected there might be more going on than just some misplaced suburban outrage. I walked to the projector and clicked a button on my remote. A new slide appeared, an email chain between Marcy and a private development firm. See, turns out, the Bulldozers weren't just a tantrum. Marcy had been negotiating with a luxury developer to buy my land out from under me, if she could get it reclassified and annexed. The kicker? She'd promised them a wellness center and yoga retreat, complete with scenic barn demolitions and transformational housing pods. Apparently, transformational housing pods is code for tiny, overpriced Airbnb units with no toilets. Gasps spread through the room. The real estate witness slouched so far down I thought he'd fall under the table. Marcy. Silent. For once. The chairman tapped his pen against the table. Let me get this straight, he said. You tried to forcefully reclassify private land, forge HOA documents, stage a demolition without permits, sue a zoning inspector, all while preparing to sell the property to a private developer, without the actual owner's consent. I sipped my water. She also called my goat morally aggressive, if that factors in. The board voted. Unanimous. Marcy's appeal was not only denied. They launched an ethics review of her HOA leadership, citing potential fraud and abuse of authority. One board member muttered something about removing her from all advisory roles permanently. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. Okay, I smiled a little. 2 weeks later, a moving truck showed up outside Marcy's house. By the end of the day, her pastel pink SUV was gone, her mailbox empty, and her custom president of the HOA plaque was found sitting in a trash can next to a broken flamingo lawn ornament. The HOA held a community vote. Linda was elected interim president. Her first motion? Stop harassing Nathan. The man just wants to raise goats. Approved unanimously. Someone left me a pie. It had a sticky note on top. Sorry about Marcy. Your farm smells fine. Long live Chad. Now, life's back to normal. The goats are thriving. Chad has a new perch where he can scream directly at the subdivision at sunrise. I added another wind chime. This one made from butter knives. Marcy would have hated it. That brings me peace. As for the land, still mine. Still agricultural. Still legally fortified by more paperwork than a federal tax audit. People ask me what I learned from all this. Easy. Never underestimate the destructive power of one angry Karen with a clipboard. But also, never underestimate the satisfaction of calmly, methodically, and legally dismantling that same Karen in front of a live audience. Especially when you get to do it with goats. And a badge. And just the right amount of sarcasm. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.